Wait a second. Wait a second. I chased across as she flagged a taxi while glancing at the Ikabachi members scattering in small groups. What about my house? The house that grants wishes. And then the useless fortune teller waved her hand with a completely flushed face. No problem. No problem. It's, schema. And what else? I was gonna tell you something else, but I forgot. What do you mean, forgot? Don't worry, you have the mark of a meeting. See ya. See ya. She smacked my back and then happily jumped into a stop taxi. I stood there dumbfounded as I saw the taxi run off. I wondered if I was alright to go home. To that house. The house that grants wishes. I walked towards the train station using the main street, dragging along the mama cycle that I bought the really cheap online for commuting that to school. Tokyo was filled with people. Even late at night in particular, the area around the train station near my house was close to many universities, so there seemed to be no difference in the amount of people milling about from noon to night. Right around where I could see the station, I almost ran into a pair of girls and apologized. One shot me a "who's this punk" look, but the other smiled and said I'm sorry. I apologized once more. That was all there was to it, but it filled my heart with joy. Indeed, a fateful mean was lying in wait for me. And a girl, no less. This might be good. The bizarre events tormenting me at the house must surely be a build-up for the happiness that awaited. In the future, I could look back at it and laugh it off. Don't say this. You're gearing yourself up for a horror story. Though that shouldn't surprise anyone. I felt less burdened when I thought of it that way. And this way I wouldn't have to move out. Moving costs would be painful for me given that I was receiving no aid from home. The offline meeting was fun too. I can't stop complaining. I can't keep complaining. I mumbled to myself, and I finally straddled the bike. I turned completely around and decided to return home for the first time in a few days. No one that came to the offline meeting today said anything about the house that grants wishes. If you look at it from another angle, it means it can't possibly be a ghost incident. It's a bit shameful to the original poster, but it's all good in the end, right? What would have happened if I dragged people over to my house and it turned out that there were no ghosts? I'd just be a laughingstock. Having finished arming myself with logic, I faced the soft, comforting night breeze and powered the pedals I'd recovered to the point where I may have even hummed. However, I noticed it when I was about to re-enter the main street from the arcade in front of the train station. There was a strange, abnormal feeling on the back of my left foot. It was like I was constantly stepping on gum, so I stopped my bike and took off my sneaker right there. And then I lifted my left foot a bit, looked at my sole, and froze. All of my good feelings were extinguished, and I felt my blood freezing. On the back of my sneaker was engraved the number 4. Damn it! What the hell, Scammer? The countdown was continuing. I pushed the mail on my cycle along with mostly a half step, and every person passing gave me a strange look out into my frantic look, but I paid them no heed. I threw away the sneaker with 4 engraved on the spot. I couldn't continue wearing such an eerie thing. The cold of the concrete and the distractor pebbles pierced my feet through my socks, but I didn't care. Why, when was 4 carved in the back of my sneaker? What was going to happen when the countdown ended? And how could I be able to escape from this terror? I had no idea, but in any case, I kept running. People in fancy clothing looked at me and laughed, but I didn't care. I just wanted somewhere with a warm atmosphere. Where? Where would that be? Eventually, I found a discount shop open late into the night after passing through the arcade, and I jumped in. A stupidly bright theme song was playing in the background. The mass products were incredibly cheap, and I sang along with a simple repetitive melody. Flamboyantly dressed girls avoided me as I stood there, leaning against a shelf holding cosmetic and mumbling to myself. An employee asked me, "Are you unwell?" And I finally realized that my left foot, which was only covered by socks, was throbbing. Then I looked, perhaps I'd stepped on a sharp shard of glass on the way, as I saw that the socks had been cut and bloodied. I brought bandages, socks, and the cheapest sneaker and cleaned the wound in the bathroom. I cleaned the back of my foot, placed the bandage, and wore the new sock. The cheap sneaker had shoddy design and wasn't very comfortable, but it was better than being barefoot. It was an unnecessary expense, but I felt comforted. I was afraid of being in the bathroom alone, so I returned to the inside of the store and took deep breaths as I wandered around the store as if window shopping. What should I do now? I thought, but could come up with no answer. At some point, I just begun standing in front of a show window absent-mindedly, and the employee from before asked if anything was wrong again, so I left the store. There was no helping it, so I began heading towards the net cafe I'd been using before, but it was already full. I peeked into the nearby karaoke box, but there was even a line spinning out of the street. I tried wandering around several stores, but they were all the same. Come to think of it, it was Saturday night. There would be no openings until the first train. However, I couldn't think of any other place to go. I wandered around the station while dragging my bike, and the police would shoot me suspicious looks. I almost felt like it would be more comforting to be arrested, but some level of common sense remained in me until I turned back to the main street. I'm getting hungry. Wow. The headlights of cars on Chugi Street illuminated me as they passed by. Normally, the cars just looked like fuel-consuming devices, but today I felt consoled by them. It was invigorating to look upon things that could be scientifically explained. However, I may have been at my limits. This was no different from being homeless. I had no one I was intimate with enough in Tokyo where the light never dims. I had no place to go. I was running low on funds. I spontaneously looked at the night sky, but just as there was no clouds, there was no stars. It was just an obsidian dimension that stretched on as if painted. Perhaps I could call my sister and borrow some money in the morning, and then go back to Shizuoka. Tokyo was too much for me, which is something humiliating to say, but this was just too unexpected. I'd imagine most people would have trouble with such a case too. Mother, I'm sorry. You supported me so much in coming to Tokyo. Then I saw a strong light at the end of the night street. When I looked up, I realized I'd come back to the family restaurant. I see. This was also open 24 hours. That was enough to make me feel like I'd found a million alleys, and my knees almost buckled. The drink bar here was cheaper than the net cafe, and there were plenty of people about due being Saturday night. I should have just stayed here from the start. I laughed myself dryly, and I must have been very hard to approach with how I looked. Anyways, left my mama cycle at the bicycle lot for the family restaurant, and then was about to enter when I recoiled. There was something even more bizarre that made me not want to get any closer. Outside, a big glass window to the store, inside the fern thicket, and seemed to have been planted to cover the store. Outside the big glass window of the store, inside a fern thicket that seemed to have been planted to cover the store? What? Was a girl dressed in full black. She wore a black long coat, even though it was spring, and her long hair that stretched down to her back, and her skirt and her boots were also pure black. Yet her skin was abnormally white, and she was crouched in the darkness, so it looked like only her face was floating. What is she doing? She was standing in the middle of the thicket, almost pressing her face against the glass as she stared into the store. It was so creepy I was about to back off. But then she slowly turned to face me. Her face was shockingly white, and the face was perfectly aligned. She was so perfect that I felt like saying she must have been a construct, like a giant biscuit doll that had accidentally been left there. That's the impression she gave. A night-colored girl. Unexpectedly, those words popped into my head. Those were the colors of the girl's eyes. Maybe it was because of the line, but I felt like an inordinately large proportion of her eyes were taken by her irisness, and that under her long eyelashes they seemed to have jet black glimmer. Below her straight-cut front hair, they shone a dark color as they gazed upon me. Are you... My mouth naturally spoke. Yoichi? The girl silently nodded. Yoichi isn't a living person. Those that meet Yoichi die 7 days later. Offline means the Yoichi attends end in terror. What I heard earlier floated around my head as I stared at the girl in front of me. 7 glasses were laid on the table in front of Yoichi, ranging from iced coffee to cola to orange juice to Japanese tea, creating her own drink bar. Aren't you supposed to just take one at a time? I said to her at an exasperated tone, but she replied, okay, a voice to do for her. This is gonna be a toughie. She's obviously a main character. Like, obvious main character if I've ever seen one. Our heroine, probably, even. I'm not a girl, so... The 2 questions. I haven't used this voice yet, but... maybe it could work. Let me cough something out, and that should be okay. Okay. As long as I drink everything, there should be no problem. And she kept her eyes on the glasses as she drank one after another. She drank orange juice, then iced coffee, and then warm Japanese tea cola. And she faithfully repeated the order of number of times, sometimes adding Robios tea and black tea and melon soda as an accent. I didn't know if there was a meaning to the order, but when she did it, it felt like some sort of traditional religious ritual, which was odd. I took a look again at the girl who went by Yoichi. She was probably still in high school. I realized when looking at her under a brighter condition that she had immense beauty. However, the problem was her eyes. Those eyes that seemed like glass beads seemed to be looking somewhere and yet also seemed to be looking nowhere. It felt as if she did not share the same world, creating a special barrier around her. Hers was not like that of a princess in her high perch, rather, if anything, like that of a witch's apprentice. Hey, I asked the girl dressed in black as she busily rifled through the drinks. Why didn't you come to the offline meeting? I was there. No, but when everyone was around, you didn't come. I was there, right there the whole time. She pointed towards the other side of the window, where I had first found Yoichi, in other words, the bush outside the store. There? With her face pressed against the glass? Then, what? From 11 until now, you were there the whole time? Yes, she nodded, and as I started at her pale face, I thought, this girl, is she what you'd call a psychotic? It was already past 2 a.m. Stick to glass for 3 hours and 11 p.m. must have creeped out the employees. When I turned back towards her, a different waitress from before was saying something to Yoichi. Her expression was contorted in an extremely mean manner, in a much more conscious manner than they'd shown me. I stood up, having felt like I'd seen something detestable. I immediately walked towards them, declared I want a drink bar as well, and then headed straight towards the counter to grab a drink. I don't know why I felt so irritated. Probably it was because I felt like I'd been laughed at as a fellow occult lover. I filled my glass to the brim with ice, then pressed the button for iced coffee. Now then, what do you do from here out? As I watched the hot iced coffee melt through the ice, I thought I could not go home, and the countdown continued. Furthermore, I had run into the Hersey classic cult girl from Mikabachi, and now, for some reason, I'm alone with her at a family restaurant late at night. In a way, it was comforting that I was not alone, but given that I was an occult girl with strange urban legends attached to her, I was left with complex emotions.
You like bad coffee?
When I returned to my seat, Yoichi said that. What?
I asked if you like bad coffee. The coffee here is unsatisfactory.
I looked at her 7 glasses again and noticed that only iced coffee had hardly been sipped. Let's see.
Information that you can gather beforehand should be processed before you act.
Yoishi's neat logic-filled words annoyed me, so I replied with some nastiness. Then allow me to gather information. Why'd you come to today's offline meeting?
Because I was interested.
In the house that granted wishes? Why are you interested in that house? The sounds are probably just structural glows. The engravings might just be my mistake, right? I said exactly what Karasu told me in a self-deprecating manner, and Yoshi simply said,
Of course,
without any hint of retorting. Then why?
When I read about that house on the forum, I felt a bit of oddity.
My voice is going right now. It feels like there's a bubble in it. I'll do it like this. Let me guess it before we go. And do it like that. It should be okay.
When I read about that house in the forum, I felt a bit of an oddity.
Her low whispering tone gave me goosebumps.
There were countless stories of oddity.
Oh, I think this is me. Why am I saying this, sir?
There are countless stories of oddities overflowing on the internet, but most of them are fake. Real ones, though, they have a scent that cannot be hidden.
Something hot bubbled forth from the bottom of my stomach at those words. Having a psycho believe you just isn't really something to be pleased about, but I was, to be frank, happy that there was someone that would finally listen to the source of my fears. Indeed, that place is real. I was in shambles already at the bottom my shoe had been carved into. Hey, what is that? Is the ghost? Are you the type that can see them? What do you mean by having a scent that cannot be hidden? I couldn't stop myself from blurring out questions, as she stared at a glass of orange juice as she flatly answered.
First question first. It may not be a ghost.
What?
Next question. It's not that I can see everything. Final question. A feeling. Real abnormalities always have a strange sense of not fitting together.
The way she switched out of her previous day's posture and began talking.
Strange phenomenon
God, my throat right now.
Strange phenomenon happened. People related to it because afraid. When you investigate, you find out that someone committed suicide there. I won't say that such neatly placed together stories are all fake. However, the real fun ghost stories surpass such things. There's a feeling as if something important has been skipped over. Being able to fill in the gaps in the single theory of the other side.
In other words, what? What is that eerie sound that keeps happening at my house? Why are numbers being written and why are they always going down? What happens to me when the numbers run out? I had subconsciously stood up as I shouted, "What's going to happen to me?" The store went silent. Everyone was looking at me. Embarrassed a bit, I sat back down. However, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't know what to do anymore. I was a bit ashamed of myself and scratched my head when Yoshi quietly mumbled,
You are the one that posted that.
I looked up and Yoshi's cold dark irises were mysteriously glimmering. I nodded and explained what had just happened. That 4 had already arrived, and that it had been carved at the bottom of my sneakers I had been wearing myself. I explained that while trembling.
How does someone...
Oh, I think this is me. How does someone carve that? Did something possess me all the way from home? I was almost in tears when I asked, and then I recoiled. Yoishi's eyes, which were once like glass beads, seemed to harbor life. And then she suddenly placed a finger to my nose and said,
Hey, close your eyes.
huh? Her pretty face peered into me, gazing into my eyes. Her face had come so close to me that, to be honest, my heart started racing. Oh, suggestion. Why do I have to close my eyes?
Just do it.
My heart thumping, I did as she said. I closed my eyes tightly. It felt like some inappropriate imagination had drifted in, so I frantically warded that away.
Imagine.
Her lips seemed to move at the back of my eyes, commanding.
You are standing at the entrance of your house.
Her frosty yet somewhat kind voice forced me to stand before my house. As
detailed as you can, imagine yourself standing at the entrance of your house.
As if controlled by those words, I imagined myself standing in that house in the darkness. Black, the sharp image of the mountain cottage, the reddish-brown roof in the mountain cottage. Wait, what? The mountain cottage, the atelier that had architecture had built for himself. The architect built for himself. The walls were faded in a nice fashion and covered by vines to the second floor. The white paint had slightly chipped off the wooden window sills. Okay. The first floor was all a garage, and the second and third floors were built as living quarters. It had no kitchen, my rented house of 30,000 yen, and at night it began making a strange sound, and the next morning a number would be carved somewhere. My legs began trembling, but I held them down with my hands.
Alright, when you've imagined it, place your hand on the doorknob.
Alright.
Now, open the door.
I opened the door. My shoes were sprawled out in the foyer. When I'd rushed out of the house, I kicked the leather shoes out of the way, but my feet refused to go further. I felt something in the house, even though no one should be in it. The thick, sticky air seemed to make me feel that way. No. I didn't want to step forward, even if this was just my imagination. Seemingly noticing my emotions, Yoshi said, whispering,
Don't worry. Slowly move in. Take off
I'm supposed to say take off?
Take off your shoes as usual and step in. When you step in, I don't care what order, but open every window in your house. Neatly, one by one, without leaving a single one.
Window? Why windows? I thought that, but I heeded her. I went by the window in the living room, unlocked it, and opened it. And then from there to the Japanese style room I was using as a bedroom. I unlocked and opened the window. Then from the Japanese style room to the bathroom, opened. To the bath, opened. Then I progressed to the third floor. There were two on the third floor by the veranda next to my desk. I unlocked and opened both. I'm done.
And now close the window in reverse order.
Huh?
Close them in order from the last one you opened.
Having no other choice, I did as she told. The window on the third floor by the desk, the veranda, and down to the second floor, and the bath, toilet, Japanese style room, living quarters. I closed them all. Yes. Done.
Yes, done. Now open your eyes.
See? Said Yoishi's voice, and I opened my eyes, and the light from the bright fluorescent lamps flooded into my eyes. I had paid no heed to them before, but the bright pop music from within the store also came into my ears. Right, this was a family restaurant. I rolled my eyes strongly when Yoichi asked me,
How was it?
"What do you mean, how was it? What was the point of this?"
Was there anyone in the rooms?
My hair stood up at those words. There was. That was on the landing on the stairs between the second and third floors. A middle-aged man wearing ashen-colored clothes seemed to have been there. Immobile, with an empathy-ish face, he watched over my every action with his staring eyes. I could never look straight at him, but he was always appearing at the edge of my sight. There was,
Wasn't there?
Yoshi's black eyes dazzled with some sort of happiness.
Was it someone you know?
I don't know. I'd never seen him before. No, could that be... to imagine someone that I'd never met before? The house still remained thick within my mind as Ueshi's joyful voice echoed through the image. Scared. I looked, and Yoichi had come close enough to me that I could feel her breath.
Hey, are you feeling scared right now?
Scared. Or rather, your eyes look like they'll eat everything scared. They'll eat everything to scare me.
Tell me more. What kind of person?
I took a deep breath and explained as I tried to stop myself from trembling. Oh boy. A gray, worn suit. I didn't remember a necktie. The suit seemed a bit big, but that may have been because the man was thinned. He had white hair, and I couldn't remember the face. The hair was grown a bit long without any care. He wore black shoes. And Yuichi was rubbing her chin, going, After some silence and glancing about at nothing with her eyes, she looked at me once more.
Hey, how about we go?
What?
To your house. Now.
Why did this happen? It was a night with a beautiful moon, and I was dangerously pedaling the mama cycle. I passed through the residential area to the north of the train station near the family restaurant, then continued west alongside the Grooved River. The Grooved River was called Shimokawa and was one of the rivers that flowed into the Takayama waterworks. This river gradually curved northeast and headed towards the area I lived. Each time my bike bounced off the bumpy road, Ueshi's body pressed against mine as she sat behind me. I could feel the slight inflation of her breast on my back through my jersey, and every so often I had misplaced thoughts of how we looked like a nice couple. However, that was hanging onto my back was a psycho girl dressed entirely in black. Her arms wrapped around my waist were oddly cold. Aren't girls supposed to have a higher body temperature? Like soft, warm, and with a nice scent? However, I could hardly feel any heat from Yoisha, who was sitting at the rear of the seat of my bicycle. Actually, in my experience, usually girls are much colder than I am. Anyways, though. If it were to turn out that only I could see her, I wouldn't be surprised. That's how far away from a date this nighttime bicycle Rangerverse was. The residential area became distant, and in its stead came fields. The city lights became dim, and it felt like the number of stars increased and the scent of grass became stronger. We were much closer to my home.
Quite rural.
Shut it. That was my response to Ueshi's line after some period of quiet.
I don't mean it in a bad way. I didn't realize Mashiro still had such a place.
That's why I figured the rent would be low. I vented a bit of my feelings of self-deprecation. Houses became very scarce, and after passing by several temples, we entered an area dense with trees. By following this narrow path, we should arrive at that house. To be honest, I don't want to go at night. When I said that behind me,
It only happens at night, so we should go at night.
Yoichi readily replied. A very sound argument. For a while, we remained wordless, until Yoichi asked,
What was your wish?
Huh?
Because you're painstakingly living in the house that grants wishes.
My voice is getting lost there. Let me take a sip of water here.
Because you're painstakingly living in the house that grants wishes, aren't you?
Painstakingly, or rather, I just had no money. Nothing special. I hoped that my family's business would go well. That's all. I answered.
Surprisingly, you think of your family.
Yoichi commented without giving a trace of emotion. Surprisingly, it was pretty harsh. I began replying, but when we saw the house beyond the Black Forest... That... Yeah. Looking over it again, I was amazed at how I rented such a house. Looking at it now, no matter who looked at it, it looked completely like a haunted house. As I slid the Mama cycle into the first floor garage, the way she jumped off the rear seat of the bike. When she pressed the switch on the steel column, the light on the ceiling of the garage turned on. That was all it took to reduce my fear. Yoichi began walking about on her own, looking at a building from several angles.
A magnificent building,
She said, and then she began walking ahead of me. She climbed the stairs to the entrance on the second floor. Not here having any other choice, I placed one foot on the stairs, but could not go further. As for Yoichi, she quietly climbed the stairs, opened the door without permission, and glanced inside. Ah, right. Now that I think about it, I flew out without locking the door. That means I left it unlocked for several days, which was very careless of me. I was just looking up from the bottom of the stairs. It was pretty shameful, but I'm the one who experienced the fear. I'd say it's perfectly normal for an animal to not want to get any closer unless safety is ensured. How is it?
dark.
Well, of course. And with that, Yoichi quickly went inside. She probably is looking for the bathroom after the 7 drinks. I was afraid of being left at the bottom of the stairs, so I rushed after Yoichi. When I opened the entrance door, the inside was already lit with electricity. Yoichi stood straight next to the lamp, switch glancing around the ceilings to the walls. That's a nice picture. Light is great. I felt calm just by it being bright to the point of not knowing whether these creepy happenings were reality. When I was about to take off my shoes at the foyer, I saw that Yoishi's knee-high boots had already been taken off neatly. She may surprisingly be well-to-do, I thought, but then it struck me. That come to think of it, we hadn't even properly introduced ourselves. Hey, it's belated, but... I turned towards Yoichi and said, still a nice picture. I go by Nagi online. My real name is Yamato Nagito. I'm a freshman at university this spring. She didn't turn around. She nodded and then said,
I'm Yoichi.
Isn't that a handle?
Ron. My surname is Mitsurugi. Not that it matters.
Mitsurugi Yoichi? She continued being odd. She used her real name online and then didn't care for her surname? I think that's 5.
5 is on the wall of the toilet.
However, as if to say that it was a waste of time, she asked that, and so I pointed to the far end of the second floor. You just want to use the toilet after those 7 drinks. Come on, admit it. Yoichi silently went up there. Without hesitating, she opened the door, turned on the light, and peered in. I quietly followed. Right, it looks like the letter 5, right? It's not a schema, right? I said to Yoishi's back.
You know of words such as schema?
She replied as if being condescending. Well, I mean, I am an occult maniac. That was a lie. It's information I just received. Alright. In a state where you've received a specific set of information, when you see a meaningless figure, your brain follows the information and creates a suitable schematic. That is a schema in the cognitive science, but this is without doubt 5. Even I see it, that's her.
In a state when you've received a specific set of information, when you see a meaningless figure, your brain follows the information and creates a suitable schematic. That is a schema in cognitive science, but this is without doubt 5. Even I see it that way.
Yoichi said, not caring for my words as she traced her fingers across the engraving. Well, it wasn't like I was determining that it wasn't a schema solved anything. If anything, it made things worse. If this was truly deliberately written 5, then someone wrote that in my house. Or rather, something that was in the house.
6 was near the bath?
Having finished observing 5, Yoshi went across the hall to the bathroom with the toilet, turned on the light, and opened the door. She placed her face against the symbol engraven to the windowsill. When I followed behind Yoshi, I smelled something odd. Truth be told, it'd been bothering me since I met Yoshi. But now that I was in close space with her, it became clear. Are you wearing some sort of perfume? Why would that surprise you? Yoshi wordlessly shook her head.
No, but the smell.
And then I realized what the smell was. I smelled it in the rooms during middle school. A sour, nose-curling smell as if something was rotting. I totally understand this is a rude thing to ask a girl. I pinched my nose as I asked, when did you last take a bath? And then Yoichi turned around and looked at me quizzically. And then she looked at the ceiling. And then she seemed like she was searching through distant memories. I had a bad feeling.
Huh. You have to think about it?
What? And this is me. What? You have to think about it?
I don't quite remember. But maybe last month?
What the hell? Take a bath! A bath!
This is a bathroom.
That's not what I mean. Do you not take showers? Clean your hair?
What does that have to do with this number going down?
Yoichi seemed completely bewildered as she asked me, but come on, I'd heard about dirty girls. I knew French royalty were famous for never taking a bath, but this is contemporary Japan. Do high school girls that don't take a bath for a month exist?
What you say lacks reason.
She said flatly, and then peered closely at the windowsill again.
It is without mistake 6.
And then she turned around and asked how about 7. She really had no interest in anything other than this paranormal. I sighed and helplessly guided her. That was on the landing towards the 3rd floor. That was where the middle-aged man I didn't know was standing during the Suspect Association game Yoshi had made me play earlier. I didn't want to follow her there, so I just gestured over there. Yoshi wordlessly climbed the stairs and then leaned towards the wall. That looks like 7 too, right? However, Yoshi didn't immediately answer. Instead, taking a mini light from her pocket, shined it into the letter 7 and looked all around it. Is something wrong?
This is certainly 7, but odd.
What's odd? I was about to ask. Suddenly, Yoichi vomited. She didn't do anything cute like place a hand to her mouth in an effort to hold it back. You think vomiting and holding the mouth to hold back your vomit is cute? But rather, staying tall with her arms folded, she boldly vomited, which definitely made me take a step back. used to vomiting. That's how it seemed, and I completely saw it through. Dripping vomit, sparkling intestinal fluid, and the remnants of the orange juice she'd been drinking. Maybe she drinks too much. I don't know. Or she smelled herself finally. What was with her? Doesn't take baths, takes vomits out in the open, and loves the occult and wears coats during the spring. A psychotic girl. However, I finally noticed that the psychotic girl did seem to be struggling a bit. Hey, are you alright? I ran to her and began rubbing her back, and she powerlessly nodded, then wiped her mouth. There was vomit on the landing, but she resumed covering as if nothing had ever happened, conversing.
I thought it was strange, since when you wrote your post, I wonder why the countdown began from 7.
Huh?
Normally, countdowns should start from 10 or 9.
How should I know? I mean, ghosts are scary because you don't know what they're thinking. How would a human like me know why something like that began counting down from 7?
Ron, the paranormal have no rules, but the other side has intentions as befitting as of the other side.
Da-da-da-da. Yuichi said as she climbed the stairs. I had no choice but to follow. As if to say there would be a 9 or an 8 and a 9 somewhere, Yuichi turned on the lights of the third floor and began peering at the walls. Her posture, as she crawled into all fours, scampering along the walls, was both creepy and comical. Afterwards, Yuichi began mumbling to herself and didn't respond to me, so I gave up and went back to the second floor. I poured water from the sink next to the toilet into a bucket and threw a rag in it. After all, this is my house, and while I couldn't forget the hollow face of the middle-aged man I saw in the family restaurant, I tried not to think about it, and cleaned up the vomit. Ugh, why does vomit smell so bad? Somehow it always entices you to vomit too. And it was irritating that the one who vomited seemed to not care at all. As if I was obvious that it would be my job to clean after her. Hey, do you not eat? There's only liquid in this, I said with a bit of a nasty tone. But Yoichi, who'd come back down from the third floor, simply mumbled that there was no 8 or 9 anywhere. I snapped at her totally depressed reaction. I said there was none, but she ignored my comment and began looking at the walls on the second floor. Half exasperated, I watched over her as I went down to the second floor with a rag and bucket. Then I looked at the clock and asked her, Hey, are you alright being out at this hour? Of course, that was pretty belated given that it was almost 3 a.m. If I were her parents, I'd be beside myself with anger. I hope you called home before coming out at this hour. Picture. I mean, I know it's my fault this is happening, but parents are always worried. I always thought my parents were annoying when I was at home, but once you go away, you feel gracious for it. However, she wasn't listening to my lecture. I noticed she was completely immobile, staring at a single point. What is it? I asked, but she didn't move. She stood still, frozen like a mannequin. I stood behind Yoshi and looked where she was looking. It's gonna be like a 9 or a 10 or 8. That was where Yoshi had vomited. And it was exactly where the middle-aged man was standing in my imagination that I only knew about. Whoa, wait a second. Who are you doing a staring match with? When I placed a hand on her shoulder, she twitched as if a curse had been lifted. And then she whispered, ever so softly,
I see.
Then she turned around. Her face was filled with joy. I could tell by a slight blush creeping into her pale face that she was excited.
Hey, did you notice?
What? But Yoichi didn't respond, instead turning her heel and heading towards the foyer. Hey, wait!
Let's get out.
She quickly put on her deep black boots and then walked straight out of the entrance. I hurriedly put on my sneakers and chased after her. I tried not to look inside as I turned off the light, closed the door, and remembered to lock it this time. I stuck close by Yoshi as she staggered down the stairs. When she walked near where the Mama cycle was parked inside the garage, Yoshi looked up at the barrel building once more and said,
This building is very interesting.
"What are you talking about?"
Under the stairs to the 3rd floor, there was a meaningless space.
That moment, I felt a chill travel down my spine. I see. The eeriness that I felt all along about this house, I finally understood it. Indeed, it had always felt like something was odd about this house, and that was the area under the stairs which I could never reach. You couldn't enter the space under the stairs from either the outside or the inside of the house. You hear about places that don't open sometimes. This was similar in that we didn't know what was inside.
And look at this.
Yoshi pointed at the mailbox by the stairs in front of the 1st floor. My full name was written on a piece of paper the size of a business card, and 3 lines had been carved in, as if to overwrite my name. It was unmistakable. Three. The countdown continued. She placed her face almost right into the engraving and mumbled happily.
This place is real.
But I said with a hollow voice, I'm at my limit.